Well, the greatest living leftist Hollywood diva is shooting off her mouth about men again, and wait till you hear what she has to say this time. Of course, I'm talking about Meryl Streep. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Bill Whittle now, and I'm Scott Ott. And Bill, you're not going to believe this quote from Meryl Streep, and it comes in the middle of a panel discussion that she was doing, and she was sitting around with people like Reese Witherspoon, Laura Dern, Nicole Kidman, very, very famous names. Some of the biggest female actors in Hollywood. And what she actually did was she stepped in during a discussion about a man who liked a show that she's in now, which apparently is targeted toward women, and said that she thinks that the term toxic masculinity hurts everyone, men and women alike. Let me read the direct quote for you. Sometimes I think we're hurt. We hurt our boys by calling something toxic masculinity. I do. And I don't find that putting those two words together, she kind of pauses there and says, because women can be pretty effing toxic. It's toxic people. We have good angles and we have our bad ones. I think the labels are less helpful than what we're trying to get to, which is a communication direct between human beings. We're all on the boat together. We've got to make it work. Bill Whittle, what do you think of this latest loudmouth progressive who's talking about men in Hollywood?
Bravo, Meryl Streep. And I will add to the sincere gratitude and appreciation. I will add that this certainly doesn't sound like a performance either. In fact, we're sure it wasn't a performance because she's surrounded by other actors and people who hold extremely left-wing opinions. Bravo. See, this is a great example of the kind of country that I want to live in. I want to live in a country where I'm able to disagree with people, but maintain some fundamental standards of basic civility. And for her to stand up in front of a group of actors like that and condemn this term toxic masculinity and the language that she condemned it in, is noteworthy. It's certainly admirable. And if you knew Hollywood the way many of us knew Hollywood, you could almost call it courageous. Again, this is not a qualifier by any means, but Meryl Streep is in the same category as Clint Eastwood is. And in Hollywood, we refer to that level of power and fame as you become a force of nature. Meryl Streep's not going to be hurt by this, in the same way that Clint Eastwood is not going to have any trouble finding people to be in or co-star in his movies, no matter how conservative he may be. He's a force of nature. Meryl Streep is also, and so her condemnation of this hateful term carries additional weight. It carries the weight of not only somebody who's highly respected by the left in terms of their artistic craft, but also it's coming from somebody who you certainly can't accuse of being a conservative shill. It reminds me very much of the kind of effect that we saw when Kanye West said he thought Donald Trump was pretty cool. I mean, this is forget the downstream political consequences. You can't very well call Kanye West, an Uncle Tom who's been in service to the Republican Party his entire life. So she has that extra credibility. And I have to tell you, I particularly like the entire sentence and the sentiments that she expressed, because as we just discussed in our last show, I couldn't agree with her more. She said, not only is the term toxic masculinity harmful to kids, to boys, she said the term doesn't make any sense. There are toxic women too. We should be concerned about toxic people, which I read to mean we should be concerned about toxic individuals. And this fundamental decency and recognition of the unfairness of this is something that deserves unmoderated praise, and there's no buts or anything else attached to it. It made me extremely happy to see, and to some extent, I was surprised. And then when it turned out that I wasn't surprised anymore, I realized, as we realized in the story we did about Martin Luther King and the journalist who a big left-winger came up with this information, decided to publish it. It indicates that individual person, whatever their personal convictions are, has some sense of integrity. that there is some sense of a moral integrity that would cause a person with the left-wing credentials of that journalist to publish a book that is absolutely damning of Dr. Martin Luther King, and it requires integrity for Meryl Streep to basically come out and say that this tactic is mean-spirited, wrong, and unfair.
Bill, it seems like you're almost suggesting that not only is it surprising that somebody of Meryl Streep's character or caliber rather would say something like this, but perhaps she's the only one who could say something like this.
That's precisely what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. Yes, she's the only one who could. She's a force of nature. Kanye West is a force of nature, and Clint Eastwood is a force of nature. And what that term means in Hollywood is that nothing can affect them. They are beyond influence. No one's going to blackball Meryl Streep. No one's going to turn down a record contract with Kanye West. They are untouchable in terms of their bona fides in the entertainment industry, and it is only somebody like that who can make a statement like that without being forced to go through the standard ritual we've seen of then offering an apology, doing the mea culpa, hanging your head in shame, going on Oprah, apologizing, talking about how much you didn't realize you had no idea you had so much prejudice in you, and you're working your very, very hardest to get rid of it, and that whole disgusting, disgraceful, ritual, a kabuki ritual that they put people through. Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. She is a person of such business power and such standing, such impeachable standing in terms of show business and acting, that she can say something like that, and no one will attack her because no one dares to attack her.
So it makes me wonder whether having somebody of Meryl Streep's prominence step out and say toxic masculinity is not a helpful term and we shouldn't use it and it's toxic people we need to be concerned about, whether that opens up a pathway for dialogue for others, or whether if another actor or actress should happen to speak up in a similar manner, essentially her associates and people in positions of power around her would say, sit down and shut up, you're no Meryl Streep.
Yes, but that's not how social proof works. When Kanye West came out as a supporter of Donald Trump, just liking him personally, having his picture taken with him, Donald Trump's political support among African males doubled. It may have tripled, but it certainly doubled in the space of 2 or 3 days. And it doubled not because somebody says, I believe this, and having somebody else say you're no Kanye West. It doubled because Kanye West gave people permission to like Donald Trump. And it's a very, very, very important aspect of the human psychology, is giving people the moral permission to do something.
But does that just happen with Streep's audience, or can it happen within the industry itself?
I think we're going to see people, I don't know how exactly it's going to play out in terms of numbers, but I have no doubt that there is some significant portion of Hollywood, some measurable portion anyway, that still retains a soul. It finds many of these things to be unfair and lack the courage to stand up to the ostracization and intimidation that would happen to them if they were to say that I find this particular policy of ours somewhat abhorrent. What Meryl Streep's statement does for them is it provides cover for them. It gives them permission. You cannot then criticize, some minor actress can come out and say that, and you can't criticize her character without directly criticizing the character of the person who said exactly the same thing, and that's Meryl Streep. It provides cover for those people, and this leads us to the weapon, a pretty good example of the power of the weapon, and really the only weapon that the left wields over us. We empower the left. When I say we, I mean just everybody in society, empower the progressive left, because we are so afraid of what they will say about our character. And if we didn't care what they said about our character, we'd be back in a free country where everybody spoke their mind. But the power of social proof is almost overwhelming. And to give you an idea of the power of it, I'll just very briefly recount a story that Mark Twain tells. During the Spanish-American War, the American fleet sailed to Manila Harbor and essentially just destroyed the Spanish fleet. But apparently there was a case during that conflict, that battle, where a number of American sailors, 6 or 7 of them or something, were trapped on board a vessel or on an island or something. And the crew of a battleship was asked for volunteers to go out there under fire and rescue those American sailors. And as it turns out, every single one of the thousands of men on board that battleship volunteered to go out and do it. And this was trumpeted as a source of great national pride, rightfully so. But Mark Twain, being the man who sees things on so many deeper levels than that, said, yes, absolutely, that is a great example of physical courage and something to be applauded. But what if, in order to save those 7 sailors, rather than going out there under fire, you had to be known as a traitor to your country for the rest of your life? How many people would volunteer then? How many people would volunteer to go save those sailors if the price was, by doing so, for whatever reason, you'll be marked as a traitor for the rest of your life? How many people would be willing to do it then? And the answer is none, I'll bet you. And he said that is the difference between moral courage and physical courage. And when I use that example, we all feel it viscerally. We feel it. I would probably be willing to go, yeah. And then, well, what if you were to be known as a traitor or a racist or a homophobe or Islamophobe or whatever? You feel that knot in your stomach tightening at the revulsion of being known for something that you actually oppose. And that is called social proof or peer pressure. And Scott, it is repeatedly shown to be the single great influencer of our behavior. People will use social proof, will go in the direction of social proof over the direction of their most deeply held beliefs in 95 out of 100 cases. And because the subject is so important, I'll just elaborate just one more very quick example of the power of it for you. An experiment was done where a patient walks into a room for some kind of a test, but the entire room is in on the experiment, and the only person the experiment is being performed on is this one individual. So they go into this room, and the professor has said, we're just going to start with some brief cognition tests, and he does a bunch of things, which is red, which is green, and so on. And then he holds up a board upon which is a long piece of string, and below that is a short piece of string. And he says to the first person, which one of these is the longer? And the guy points to the one on the bottom. And the professor says, okay. And now the guy who just walked into the room says, the guy was out of his mind, what? He goes to the second person. He says, which one of these is longer? And so second, the bottom one is obviously. Now the guy's starting to think, okay, something's going on. By the time they get to the third and the fourth guy, this guy wonders who the hell he's with. But by the time they get to the 10th or 11th guy, of people solemnly saying that what is clearly, to your own eyes, the short string is the long string, you begin to doubt your own sanity. And when you finally get to this guy, in these experiments, when they finally got down to him, and there had been so much social proof saying that what he sees in front of his own eyes is wrong, most people, not all people, but most people, when asked, will agree that the shorter string is in fact longer than the long one, because they are unwilling to be seen as that different, and they suspect that rather than those 9 or 10 or 12 people being insane, they must be insane themselves. And when you're willing to publicly state that something that you can see, this big versus this big, and you're willing to say what is directly contravened by the evidence of your own eyes, that's an indication of the power of social proof. And that's why what Meryl Streep has done is very, very important.
Final question, and we need to keep the answer very brief. I need to go watch a VHS tape of The Devil Wears Prada, and it's very important for me to do that right now. So here's the final question. I can almost hear the fingers clicking on the keyboards for people who will comment on this. And to quote another famous Hollywood actor, it's a trap. Don't get sucked into what Meryl Streep is saying. You know she's a big Hillary Clinton supporter. You know she's a big feminist. You know she's a big liberal. This is just setting the stage for something else she wants to do or say.
God, I think that's ridiculous. I mean, first of all, I've never understood the argument. When I come out and make statements about individuals, the left will say, well, you're just saying that to cover the fact that you're a racist. And my response to that is, if I was a racist, I'd be making racist statements. I'm not doing this. I'm not spending my entire life to provide a cover for what I really believe. I don't see any sense in that. And the idea that she's somehow trying to, worm her way back into the public's affection or whatever you want to say, I just don't think it works that way. It's clear from the kind of movies that Hollywood makes and the kind of statements that Hollywood actors make all the time that these people don't care what the American public thinks. They care about what the people at their cocktail parties think, because those are the only people they know and they're the only people they respect. So for her to have some kind of ulterior motive for this just doesn't make any sense. And furthermore, I don't believe it's true. This may start some clicking on keyboards, but look, the reason I'm here doing what I do is because I'm a daywalker. I'm a guy who kills vampires because I used to be a vampire. I understand this. I know how it works. And to be an actor of Meryl Streep's quality requires some shred of something to be there. Now, I'm not saying that I'm going to listen to everything Meryl Streep says from this point forward because she was right about this one thing. But I am saying that it has changed my opinion of her to the degree that it makes me realize that even though we would disagree on just about everything, she has the fundamental integrity to say that when something is oppressive and wrong, as she sees it, she'll stand up against it. And there's nothing to do but to admire that. And to people who say, oh, Bill, you're getting soft or whatever, look, I want to be soft. I do. I don't like being this guy. I don't like being a guy who's having to say things like, well, I don't care, but we have to fight dirty because they fight dirty. I believe that, but I don't like it. I would much rather live in America where we can all agree to disagree and have a civil conversation about what the best way to get to a happy future is. And I don't care if that person who is making a statement like that, I'm proud of it when it's a conservative. I'm sometimes surprised, as I was in this case when it was a Democrat, but I'm not. But it doesn't mean I don't like it. When somebody comes out and says something that I think is noble and worthwhile and standing up to bullying and tyranny, I don't care who says it. To me, standing up against evil is standing up against evil. And while I may disagree with her on everything else, including policies that I think are evil, I cannot find myself in a position where I'm not willing to grant her the credit for doing the right thing because she did the right thing.
Celebrating the truth, no matter the source. Bill Whittle now comes to you 5 times each week. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com. If you'd like to join their ranks, you can go to BillWhittle.com and click that Become a Member link. So for Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members for making this happen.